Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. I have a quick question before we dive into today's episode. I would love to know who you are and why you listen and what you'd like to hear more of on the show. I've been doing this podcast thing for just over 3 months now, have about 3,000 downloads, and I know nothing about which shows you like, what you'd like to hear more of, what kinds of guests you'd be interested in tuning into. If you have health concerns that you'd like me to talk about as a Chinese medicine expert, I would love for you to talk back to me. So if you have a minute or two and are in front of a keyboard or a phone, shoot me an email at brody@brodywelch.com. That's BRODIE at brodywelch, WELCH.com, and let me know. I would love to know more about you and how I can help, because really the whole point of this podcast is to uplift the world and raise the profile of healing modalities that work and give you support and encouragement for your healing and conscious journey through the world. So let me know what you'd like to hear more of, and I would sure appreciate it. Thanks so much. Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity. On today's show, we go back to the absolute basic habits of daily existence. I'm talking about food, sleep, and exercise. Things that we all know are important if we're going to stay healthy and balanced. But today we're going to be talking about them from an Ayurvedic perspective with a Western holistic podiatrist who is also an Ayurvedic practitioner. And of course, I chime in with my Chinese medicine stuff as well. We talk about natural rhythms and natural cycles that are true for everyone, but also how we may want it to consider a more personalized approach depending on our given constitutional type, or dosha as it's known in Ayurveda. Here's today's conversation. With me today, I have Dr. Michele Summers Colon, who is the author of Body Wisdom, 10 Weeks to Transformation So You Can Get and Feel Healthy Again. She is also a physician, specifically a holistic podiatrist, an entrepreneur, yoga instructor, and motivational speaker, offering workshops and online courses based on her book. She hopes to inspire women to live healthier, happier lives and to honor their bodies, wants, and desires, a mission that may sound very familiar to listeners of this here podcast. And she lives with her daughter in a suburb east of Los Angeles, California, where she hikes and practices yoga. Welcome to the show today, Dr. Michele.
Oh, thanks, Brody. I'm happy to be here.
I am really excited to talk to you. We have a lot in common, obviously, and I'm really curious about your book, Body Wisdom, and also your path to how you got to do what you're doing now, because most people kind of aspire to be physicians, and that's kind of like the top of the heap, and then you're done, and your path has taken a lot of interesting twists and turns, and I'd love to hear what led you on your journey to all the things that you currently do.
Sure. Well, I went through the traditional route of going to medical school right after college. I really only took 1 year off in between to kind of save up some money and buy a car and do a couple things like that. And so when I graduated from medical school, I was studying podiatry and did my surgical training, a 2-year program in podiatric surgery. And I practiced in my office right out of school. I worked for another doctor for a couple years, and then I opened my own. And I've been in that same practice now for 19 years, believe it or not. It's kind of mind-boggling when I think about it, because time has really flown by. But I would say over the last 10 years, I've had some of my own health issues come up to where I started looking into different types of medicine, different types of holistic medicine, because I really wasn't getting better with traditional Western medicine. So I had some GI issues and I had some back pain, and I was wrongly diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I was put on a strict regimen for that. And after about 6 months to a year, I went to some more specialists, and they decided that I did not have Crohn's disease, but they didn't know what was wrong with me. And so it was just doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment, and I was just spinning my wheels, not getting better. So I decided that I would do some of my own research and try to figure out what was going on with me. So I ended up coming across Ayurveda and working with a practitioner here in Los Angeles. And we really started working with food and food allergies and dietary changes, as well as starting with yoga and using yoga as a way to heal my back. So with yoga and Ayurveda being really sister sciences to each other and working with both of those two forms for healing, I started getting better really quickly. And I was just amazed that in such a short period of time, I can get so much better when I was spending so much time trying to go the traditional route with no success. So that's really what got me into Ayurveda. And I decided at that point that I needed to study it further and get special training so that I could start bringing that into my own practice and using what I could with my patients so that I could teach them how to start healing themselves too.
Wow, your story is so, I don't want to say common because I don't want to diminish it, but it's like it's such a familiar one,
it
right?
is.
Like that people think that they're doing everything that they absolutely can, and then it's like you just have to kind of jump paradigm. Looking at it from a totally different lens or through a totally different lens, you see your body differently and you're able to make entirely different choices.
Yeah,
Like around what to eat.
Exactly. And it was really the third time that had happened to me. Different health issues that have come up, and one was with having miscarriage issue, and then with my low back, being told that I needed surgery. And then once the GI issue came up, it was kind of like, okay, I get the message. The third time's a charm. I'm gonna do something about it. And that's what really kind of prompted me to really start changing things.
Well, and to do that requires, I imagine, for a physician, an allopathic Western MD, you know, that requires kind of a looking at what do you have faith in, right? Like that in a sense, like what medicines we turn to, we have to believe in to some degree. And so being willing to challenge kind of like, wow, the model that I currently practice isn't everything. There's another way of looking. I just have such tremendous respect for people who are able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting to explain to other people, even though this is what I do, there's all these other things that we can do. So let's look at everything, you know. So when I'm talking to a patient, it makes sense. But when I'm talking to a colleague, they're kind of baffled. Like, what are you talking about? Like, they can't even comprehend really what I'm saying unless they've had a similar experience in their own lives.
And I think actually that's becoming more and more the norm.
Yeah.
I just hear that a lot lately. So you mentioned that Ayurveda and yoga are sister sciences, and for people who aren't super familiar with Ayurveda, could you give us a little bit of background on what Ayurveda is all about?
Sure. So Ayurveda is one of the oldest forms of medicine around. It came from India about 5,000 years ago, and they've been practicing Ayurveda and yoga for, you know, so many years there, thousands of years. And it's still practiced there today, and it's practiced somewhat in the U.S. as well. But really what Ayurveda does is it really looks at everything in terms of getting things back into balance. And when we talk about balance, it's being in line with nature and the rhythms of nature, the natural circadian rhythms of the day, when the sun is rising and the sun is setting, and really going back to basics. So not being in this really high-tech world that we're in and staying up late on our computer, but really going back to, you know, waking when the sun rises and settling in for the evening when the sun goes down. And so in Ayurveda, there's the theory that everything is composed of the 5 elements: fire, earth, water, air, and ether. And when you combine those elements in different ways, it comes up with different compositions. And we can get later into the doshas, but when we talk about the doshas, which are the 3 main constitutions or body types, everything kind of fits into those 3 categories. And those doshas are made up of different combinations of those 5 elements.
Yeah. I love the similarities. Sorry to interrupt you, but between Ayurveda and Chinese medicine is we have 5 elements, but they're different elements. Like we have wood and metal instead of air and ether. But similarly, it's looking at like based on the rhythms of nature, based on the fact that everything that exists in nature exists in the body as well. That there are these pairs of opposites, which in Ayurveda are the gunas, and which in Chinese medicine are like the pairs, yin yang pairs essentially, that we use to diagnose, and that everybody's got a different unique constitution but that we can classify according to these broader types, and that one size fits all medicine just doesn't apply because everybody's got this sort of bio-individual constitution thing going on.
Yeah, I love the similarities between Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. We talked last time, and I said that was the next thing I want to start really studying because it's so parallel. It's so amazing that this knowledge and this wisdom has been around for so long, and in Western medicine, we have to do studies to prove that meditation works, right?
Right.
They're doing all these studies, and it's so funny because we've known that for so many years. So.
And it's fun when science proves these ancient wisdom traditions correct. I love that overlap.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't necessarily need to wait for the white paper to do these things that Chinese medicine and Ayurveda suggest.
And some people do, though. And that's what's
fine.
great about it, because it's bringing it more mainstream when people can read about it. So.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you mentioned, getting back to basics, right, and getting in sync with nature. I'd love for you to walk us through some of those basic habits that Ayurveda emphasizes, well, first of all, as foundational, and how they can keep us healthy. So let's talk about sleep.
Yeah, so with sleep, we want to really look at the time of day that we're sleeping and the time of day we're rising. And as I mentioned, starting to wind down when the sun goes down. So that's really when we're getting into a certain time of day. And Ayurveda breaks everything up into threes, really. So the 3 doshas, the 3 times of day, the 3 times of night, and the 3 periods of your life. And so when it does that, it really is breaking it into those 3 doshic qualities, the vata, the pitta, and the kapha. And so if we're looking at sleep, we really want to make sure that we're going to bed and getting to sleep in that nice kapha time of day, which is
kapha. Yeah, let's just define kapha.
Yeah, so kapha is the dosha that's made up of earth and water elements. And so it's going to be more heavy, it's going to be more grounded, it's going to be more moist. So in terms of the time of day, we talk about it being that like juicy time of day that's so nourishing, and we can start to feel heavy, like sleepy, and that's the perfect time to go to bed. So that time of day is between 6 to 10 p.m. Now, obviously, we're not going to be going to bed at 6, but we want to try to go to bed towards that 10 o'clock hour, because after 10 o'clock, it starts changing into the other time of evening, which is the energy levels are changing and things like that. So we want to really stick to that time of day to do all of our bedtime routines and winding down. And that's when we want to connect with our loved ones. And so it's also, that sensual time where we're with our partners. And we really want to do all those nourishing habits that will support our sleep, like really good bedtime routines, like taking a warm bath instead of a stimulating shower, and drinking a warm cup of herbal tea instead of coffee or something caffeinated, and making sure that we've eaten early enough in the day so that our food is completely digested before we go to bed.
Yeah, all of those things really coincide in Chinese medicine with yin, right? So if we think about yin and yang, that yang is like the busy, active, warming, productive time, and yin is the cool, the peaceful, the restful, the still. So obviously at dusk, when things get dark, it's like the world settles into this natural, cooler, peaceful time. And so, yeah, a lot of what you're saying is like, how can we keep that? How can we nourish that sense of rest, that sense of peacefulness that we need in order to get to sleep, and the sweetness of our connections, right?
Yeah.
And relationships.
Yeah, because a lot of, especially women, because we tend to, have children and we want to clean the kitchen and do all this stuff in the evening, and a lot of people wait till their kids go to bed to start doing all of these things, and then they're up late working on things because the kids are asleep. And so it's kind of going against the natural rhythms. That's when we're supposed to be winding down. Like when our kids wind down, we should be winding down too. And so we have to really look at what are we doing in that nice, juicy time of night to prepare our bodies for sleep.
Yeah, and it's so easy to just keep the day going.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm guilty of the getting back on the computer to create more stuff and then forget it. It's like after 9, if I'm still doing that, then it's like the mental intensity and activity and creativity takes over, and I don't want to go to sleep at all.
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're aiming for 10 o'clock, 9 is a good cutoff time to shut down our electronics, shut down our computers, turn our phones off or to silent mode or whatever it's called, so that we're not getting stimulated with all that blue light and all of those things that stimulate our brain right before bed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up too, like making sure that you're not digesting super late, because that's a process. It's a yang activity. And so it's that we do that during the yang times of day, and that as it gets more yin. And there's actually all sorts of studies coming out now about like the intermittent fasting, right? Like making sure that you have at least that 13 hours between dinner and breakfast,
right.
And like how like that's the time when the digestive system cleans out. And if you never really, like if there's always food going in, then your system never really gets to clean out, and it could potentially keep you awake, and metabolizing sugar and alcohol can wake you up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
and when you're sleeping, we don't want to be wasting all of our energy on digesting food. We want that energy that we have during the night to be repairing our cells and rejuvenating our energy stores and doing all of the repair processes that our body needs to do while we're sleeping, so that when we wake up in the morning, we're energized and we're like ready for the day, right?
it's interesting. Like I don't know that many people would frame it as like it takes energy to sleep, but but what you're talking about, it's like, yes, there is. It's not just like we're passively there with our eyes shut and like nothing happening. It's like we're in this mode of resting and repairing. That yin state is what we need in order to keep going. It's like it's when our brains clean out. It's when our immune system goes to work. It's all sorts of stuff that is going on. That is. Yeah, like I love thinking about it that way, that it requires its own energy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hormonal things going on with women. And so
what's going on hormonally?
Well, a lot of women that are going through adrenal fatigue or different types of hormonal imbalances wake up at the same time every night. And a lot of them report like around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning waking up. Yep. And their hormones are really kind of off the charts. So when we're not taking care of ourselves and, going to bed, giving ourselves enough rest, that just kind of goes off the chart as well.
What do you see as the hormones that are involved in that 3 a.m. wake up? Like, is that a cortisol thing exclusively?
Yeah,
or
well,
is that,
it's that, but it's related to the pineal gland and the pituitary. And so they're all kind of, related. And when they get stimulated and off, it just really can mess with women's sleep. And that's a really, a really common complaint. And so, doing a nice meditation or something relaxing at night, even a guided meditation for people who have trouble calming their mind or getting all those thoughts out of their mind. You know how some people go to bed and they start having the grocery list and the to-do list running through their head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if that's one of the things that you're going through, you can just put on a guided meditation, and even if it's just one that's talking you through breathing exercises or, imagine you're at a beach or whatever it's telling you, it's getting your mind really listening to what the voice is telling you to do rather than thinking about all your other things. And that can really help you fall asleep.
I love that trick because it does. It lures your mind back into your body, right? Away from your to-do list and things like that. In Chinese medicine, that 3 a.m. wake up with an active mind corresponds with the liver and like liver qi stagnation, which we very much associate with stress. And and the liver has to do with the unfolding of things according to a proper timing and schedule, whether that's a menstrual cycle or whether that's your circadian rhythm, that kind of thing. And one of the things that helps the liver in general is obviously breathing and meditation are great, but exercise, especially going for a walk or something like that during the day, can help move the liver qi so that we sleep well at night. What does Ayurveda have to say about exercise?
There's a couple things. One, we do also recommend going for a walk or doing some light exercise after dinner to kind of help the digestion and help everything get moving before you go to bed. But nothing too strenuous after dinner because you don't want to get, too excited before bed. But in terms of overall, exercise is recommended to do first thing in the morning before you have any food. So you wake up, you hydrate, and once you do your hydration, which is drinking at least 2 to 4 glasses of water, warm water or room temperature water, then that's the best time of day to exercise to really get those energy levels up for the day.
Yeah, and do you recommend different kinds of exercise for different types of people or different problems that people might be experiencing?
Yeah, it really goes back to the doshas again. So we talked about kapha a little. In kapha dosha, they're not really into exercise that much, like in general. They're pretty happy with just kind of relaxing and not exercising. So for kaphas, it's really important to get on an exercise routine and keep it up daily. They're probably the ones that have to remind themselves to exercise. Whereas the pitta dosha is more of the fiery, hot dosha where they really love exercise. Like they're the types that can run marathons and do, Ironman and all this kind of stuff because they just love exercise so much. So for them, it's not really an issue. They're going to do it anyway. And is
it okay for them to do intense exercise that they're drawn to like that?
It is yes and no. So if they're getting too overheated, then no, because maybe something else is off balance in them. But in general, they like to run and they like to do these really intense things. So if they're running and so they have the wind and the air moving, that kind of helps them cool off in a way. So doing things outside for them, like cross-country skiing and running and swimming and things like that, are going to actually be really good for them, even though they're very strenuous.
And for kaphas, for people who kind of would just prefer not to exercise, just doing anything and getting in the habit of it is is going to be more important than the what.
Exactly.
And actually, I mean, a lot of times, like kapha people, once they get going, they can go forever, right? Like, they actually can be quite strong, but it's just getting over that initial hump of like, getting out of bed.
Yeah.
It's time to do it.
Exactly.
And how about vata people?
So vata people, they're a little bit more, they're made up of the air and ether elements more, so they're more airy, meaning they can get stressed and kind of in their head a lot more. So things are going to be more grounding and more calming to them. So yoga is really good for vata people, especially doing some yin or restorative yoga that can kind of get them, relaxed and out of their head. And just anything that's not really windy. So like downhill skiing or running, things like that are not going to be the greatest things for them.
Yeah, it seems like things like yoga and qigong and tai chi, things that involve slow meditative movement that also involve strength, could be really good medicine for them.
Yeah.
So ideally exercising first thing in the morning after we drink our several glasses of water and hopefully poop, right? Like that's sort of key, and dumping yesterday before today begins.
And that's part of, the hydration and getting that big bolus of water going through you. It helps move everything out of you. And then once you poop and feel like you're flushed and refreshed, then you do your exercise, and then you're ready to start getting ready, have your breakfast, and get on with your day.
Do you find that like, for example, if exercise is someone that people are doing anyway and they're doing it after work, what changes, or why would it be different to exercise first thing in the morning when Ayurveda suggests that is a good time?
Well, again, we're going back to those 3 times of day. So in the morning, your energy is higher, so that's the best time of day to exercise. If you do it in the middle of the day, which is the pitta time of day, that's going to be where you're more heated, and so it's not the best time of day to exercise. And then if you wait until the evening, which a lot of people do because their work schedule, and that's fine. If they do it after dinner, again, it helps everything get moving, and it helps with digestion, but you just don't want to do anything too strenuous, because then your energy levels are going to go up again, and then you're going to be trying to get ready for bed and you're all excited from, all your exercise. So it has to do mostly with the time of day and the energy levels.
Got it. And the other thing, so in terms of getting good sleep, exercising on a regular basis, eating is the other thing that we all have to do every day. And what are some tips from Ayurveda that you could offer to our listeners around diet?
Oh, that's a great question, because there are so many things that we could talk about, but the main things would be really making sure that we're not eating too late in the day, like we talked about already. So if we're aiming for that 10 o'clock bedtime, we want to try to eat at least 4 hours before. So that's a 6 o'clock dinner time. And I know with a lot of people's schedule and commuting, it sounds kind of crazy, but that would be the optimal time, so that you have that 4 hours, that 3 to 4 hours after dinner to digest all your food. And we also don't want to eat anything too big and too heavy at night. So we want to make our biggest, heaviest meal during our lunchtime hour, which...
Oh, Chinese medicine totally agrees on that front. Like that, and actually, the same thing, like in Chinese medicine, that the spleen and the stomach, the main organs of digestion, they go through their peak in the morning, like from 7 to 11 a.m., and therefore they are at their weakest between 7 and 11 p.m. And so eating before 7 is highly recommended in Chinese medicine. And that idea of, like that digestive fire is really common to, in Ayurveda, the concept of Agni is the concept of spleen chi or stomach chi in Chinese medicine, where that goes with the diurnal cycle. And so eating more at lunch is, both traditions.
Because during lunch, that's when the sun is at its peak, and then that's when our digestive fire is at its peak. So like you said, they coincide, and that's when you want to have your biggest meal, your heaviest meal. If you're going to have, carbs and things like that, that's the meal that you want to have it in.
And let's see, what about breakfast? Does Ayurveda feel strongly about breakfast?
The thing about breakfast, we want to do it after we've done our exercise. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, depending on your dosha, some people actually can get away with not eating breakfast. So, for example, the kapha types, they're already really sturdy and heavy, and sometimes they're holding on to extra weight, and they're sometimes perfectly happy with skipping breakfast. and having 2 meals instead. So they might have their lunch a little earlier than everyone else, and then they'll just have their lunch and their dinner and they're fine. Vata, because Vata is a little bit more frail, a little bit more thin, they usually are the people that say, oh, I can't skip my breakfast. I have to have my breakfast. So, and Pitta's kind of in the middle. Some Pitta people love to have breakfast and some don't. And it kind of is a individual thing. It also, I think, depends on, did they just run 5 miles? Because maybe they're not really they're hungry because they use a lot of calories, but at the same time, they're really hot. So they need to cool off first. So breakfast varies a little bit, but we just don't want to force the kaphas to eat breakfast because, they're already sometimes full and carrying extra weight. So if they're not hungry, we don't need to force them. And that was one thing that I kind of learned later because my daughter is more kapha, and once she got to a certain age, she didn't want breakfast anymore. And I was in that old mind of, okay, breakfast is the most important meal. I'm the mom. You have to have breakfast. And then I realized at some point, she's not hungry in the morning. I'm not going to force her to eat.
Yeah, and that if her system, kapha, it can be a little slow, right? Like the digestion can take a little bit longer, and that might just be a more natural rhythm for her body.
Right.
Yeah, good observation, Mom. So let's see, what else?
I mean, there's some other things with diet, like we want to make sure that when we're having our meals, that that's the only thing we're doing. We're not doing it in front of a computer. And we want to be nice and calm because Ayurveda believes also in cooking food, like cooking food with love. So cooking your own food, putting it love and intention into your food. And so when you eat it and consume it, you don't want to be in the middle of an argument with your husband about bills or something like that. You want to be in a nice, relaxed state so that you can digest all your food in a nice, relaxed way.
You can tell when food is made with love and of course, like the energy that you spend or the energy that your nervous system is in when you're eating the food absolutely will affect how it's digested.
Yeah.
All that. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's important to make meals a peaceful time where you intentionally stay away from stressful topics.
Yeah, and if you're someone who prays before your meals, that's great. And if you're not, just taking a moment to just take a deep breath, like one deep inhale, one deep exhale, that can be kind of like your prayer. Just taking that moment to appreciate the food and to thank the people who made it for you if you didn't make it, and thank the farmers who got the food and everyone who grew the food. It's just kind of that whole thing of we're all one and appreciating all of that as we consume our food because it's, going back into the cycle.
Oh, I love that. And I actually do that. And rather than stare at my food in silence, when I got married and found myself an insta-parent to 2 stepkids, we instituted the tradition of doing a gratitude moment before our meals. And so everybody goes around the table and says something that they're grateful for and just comes up with something that that we can say. And that, I feel like really shifts the energy from wherever we've been in our day to okay, we're all here together. We've all now learned a little bit about each other's lives and we can kind of connect in this nourishing way.
Yeah, that's such an important thing to do as a family. I love hearing things like that.
Can you tell us any other secret teachings from your book that is coming out? It's not yet out yet, right?
Yeah, it will be out soon. Well, the first part of the book really just goes into what we talked about in the beginning a little bit, talking about the doshas, and there's a dosha quiz in there for anyone who doesn't know what their dosha is. You can also find some online. They're very simple. And once you really know what that is, looking at, where do you feel off balance and where can we make improvements in that? So with Ayurveda, it's always about, what's your true nature or your dosha? What's the nature of your imbalance, and then what's the nature of what we can do to remedy that. So if you're a Vata and you're feeling very in your head and very stressed out, then we want to do things that are the opposite of that. So we want to do things that are relaxing, like meditation or gentle yoga or something like that. And same goes with food. If you're a Pitta and you feel you're always very hot, they tend to run hot, you're having some acid in your stomach or something like that, what's the nature of what you're off balance with. So you need to do the opposite of that. So if you're feeling that burning in your stomach, then you want to start eating things that are more cooling, like watermelon and coconut juice and stuff like that are going to cool your system down. So it's really teaching you how to look at those different cues that your body and your mind are giving you rather than just saying, okay, I need to go to the doctor and get a pill.
That sounds really empowering. It sounds like you're teaching people to kind of look at the nature of their imbalances and to figure out what would be medicine.
Yeah, because once you start realizing, all these different cues that your body's giving off, you'll see patterns, you'll see trends, and you'll be able to address them before they become a big problem. Like
Yeah.
one big problem with people that are tired and they're pushing themselves at the end of the day, everyone has different cues that their body gives off of being tired. Like for me, my legs cramp up. For some people, it's their feet. For other people, they get a headache. It's like, what is it that your body's telling you? I'm tired. You need to go to bed. Right?
Yeah.
And start listening to that.
For me, it's like literally keeling over and having my eyes closed before I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be trying to write something right now.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, it's subtle cues like that you get in tune with. I always like to ask people who write books about the books that influence them. I'm curious if there's been an especially influential book that you've come across on your path.
Yeah. Well, really the first thing that comes to mind are business books because that's what I usually consume. And so The One Thing was a really good book for me by Gary Keller because it really talked to you about focusing on one thing at a time and having a Vata nature. I could be focused on a lot of things at once. So that really helped me. Okay, focus on this. Don't try to multitask. Get this done. Really showed me how to, organize my day, my schedule, things like that to just really stay focused. So that was one that I really, really liked.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds like an excellent read. Because, yes, it's so easy to get pulled in a zillion different directions. I think not just for those of us who are entrepreneurs, but also just for anyone trying to manage multiple things in life.
Yeah. And I had one other one. The other one is also business, but it touches in all areas of your life. And it's called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. And it really talks about, making those really small baby steps in different areas of your life that will show you great results at the end. So taking small steps each day to improve different areas of your life. And it goes into family and your marriage and your health. And it shows you how, if you want to lose 50 pounds, you can't try to lose 50 pounds in one day, right? It's like 1 pound at a time. Kind of an example.
And it's that like journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step idea, and that really like people who accomplish huge things do them piece by piece, do them every day and get there eventually. And I think that's really inspiring because we really can have very different lives when we make very different choices. And one of the things that I see in my practice all the time, and you probably see this as well, I know you do group coaching with people, is that so often like we have good intentions, but it's the follow through that is the difficult part. And that's really where we need support from providers, coaches or friends or family or whoever who can kind of like hold that vision for you and keep you motivated or accountable or believe in you and kind of keep you taking that step day after day towards the big goals, because otherwise it can be really tough and life gets in the way, and it's like the force of inertia and what we're currently doing, it takes a lot to overcome that.
Yeah, that's true.
If people want to find out more about the work you do and stay in touch, where can they find you?
So the easiest way would be to find me on my website, and that's drmichele.com. And I just wanted to mention that I just launched my podcast recently, and it's also on my website, and it's called Body Wisdom. That you can also find it in iTunes.
Awesome. I love, love, love that you are a fellow podcaster and with this holistic mission of empowering people to take better care of themselves. It always just warms my heart to find other like-minded people who are on this path, because the world needs to change.
Yes. We do. We all do.
Well, Michele, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Do you have any other final things that you want to share? Any final words of encouragement?
I would just like to share what Jeff Olson was teaching in The Slight Edge, to just, make those small changes. I like to call them micro habits. Don't try to, have such a big goal that you set in one big chunk. We want to break it down into smaller chunks, and then we'll be able to accomplish all of those goals.
Yeah. Feels doable when it's smaller, and then you can build on that success.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michele. I really appreciated your wisdom.
Thank you, Brody.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.